en la selección de colmenas para liberarse de varroa.
Okay. Some virus like the problems of the wing, I can't remember the name in English, but one virus and another also. ¿Tu pregunta final era, Pablo?
No, o sea, dadas las dos condiciones, o sea, ¿qué importancia daría como tercer punto al acicalamiento o grooming para selección de colmenas como patrón de cría?
How important is the grooming in the beehive to select the colony?
My impression is that it is of some importance, but not the major resistance trait.
Es sumamente importante, pero no es la mayor ni la más importante en todo este tratamiento.
Yeah, and the reason we can tell is that the natural host of the mite, which is Apis cerana, they groom intensively, but Varroa can live for an entire year in the colony despite that grooming.
Bueno, la Apis cerana, que es con la que ha evolucionado, ellas tienen un grooming bastante intensivo y están eliminando constantemente todo el año sus varroas.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Vamos en vivo.
Estamos en vivo.
Una pregunta, ingeniero. Yo tengo una pregunta. ¿Cuál es el porcentaje mínimo de varroa aceptable en una colmena para no dar tratamiento? Una. Y la otra, ¿puedo tratar todo el año con productos orgánicos? Porque en lo personal no me gusta usar químicos.
Okay,
por la salud pública. Ni el poli y lo demás.
Okay. How is the percentage of the varroa than bees? It's a good level to the natural development of the beehive. How is the percentage?
I can speak for what I see in California.
Okay. Él va a hablar de lo que ha visto en California. Go.
At a 1% infestation rate, the colonies do well.
La colonia lo va a hacer bien si tiene un porcentaje, o sea, un 1% de varroa.
By 5% infestation rate, then the colonies do not grow as well nor produce as much honey.
Cuando va a llegar al 5% ya no va a producir más miel.
By 15%, 15%, 1.5, then the colonies start to die.
Cuando llega al 15%, la colonia empieza a morir.
That's in California.
Eso es en California.
And that's a pretty general number around the world.
Y es un número general casi para todo el mundo. Talking about the European honeybee, yes? EHB?
Sí. Yeah, and also in the bees in Africa, also, they generally maintain an infestation rate below 5%.
Okay. Le preguntaba que esta experiencia es en Estados Unidos con abeja europea y me contesta que sí, es general en abeja europea, pero también en abeja africana en África, en el África misma, ¿no? El continente africano.
Yeah. And those are not Africanized bees, those are pure African Apis mellifera scutellata. They maintain a low varroa level in the colony.
En este caso está hablando de la abeja africana pura, de raza pura, la Apis scutellata, que logra mantener a raya a la varroa, no de la abeja africanizada, que sería la que tenemos en Latinoamérica.
And the researchers are still investigating the traits that the bees use in order to do that.
Hablando de la abeja africanizada, sería importante poder repetir el hecho de que muchos apicultores no hacemos el tratamiento contra la varroa
Eso.
en la abeja africanizada. Entonces, ¿qué tan importante es hacer el tratamiento de la varroa en abejas africanizadas que está presente casi en toda Latinoamérica?
Okay, the question say many beekeepers in Latin America they don't make any control to Varroa. It's no chemical, no organic, any treatment.
Yeah.
Why? What is the reason? Because we need to make that treatment.
You don't need to.
Realmente nosotros no necesitamos hacer, pero why? Sorry.
If the bees are doing well, you don't need to treat.
Okay, I have a question, please. Dice que las abejas pueden resolver el problema, por lo tanto, ellas no necesitan. Pero yo tengo una pregunta y quiero decirle, ok, en el caso de Bolivia, y debe ser muy similar en otros países latinoamericanos, cuando los apicultores no hacen el tratamiento, el rendimiento de colmena año es solamente 12.5 kilos, 13 kilos. Okay, the question is, in Bolivia, the rate of production is around 25 pounds per colony per year without treatment. But that volume of honey is not good.
Right.
We want 30 kilos or 40 kilos like Argentina or Chile, because they make a treatment, but they are working with European honeybees.
And the only way to answer that question is to do the experiment.
Okay, la única respuesta para esta pregunta es empezar a experimentar.
And see whether treatment increases your honey production.
Okay, sí. Si nosotros empezamos a hacer tratamientos, vamos a ver la producción de miel. Okay, Pablo. Pablo, tu pregunta.
No.
Gravy.
Johnny primero.
Okay, Johnny, adelante.
Entendamos bien la pregunta que hizo Percy. Lo que Percy trataba de reflejar o hacernos entender en la respuesta de Randy, yo creo que es cuando nosotros no tratamos y controlamos varroa, producimos menos. Entonces, la pregunta sería si Percy la vuelve a reformular, que nosotros deberíamos controlar más para poder tener mejores resultados. Percy, vuelve a preguntar. Tu pregunta se fue muy larga. Sí, en realidad habría que ver. Hay productores que son reacios a hacer el control de la varroa porque dicen que en sus colmenas no hay varroa. Entonces, pero sus niveles de producción son bajos. Entonces, ¿qué tan importante es escuchar a Randy? ¿Qué tan importante es hacer el tratamiento? Y hace un rato en su exposición lo dijo, de que si no haces el tratamiento, tus niveles de producción bajan. Entonces, escuchar a Randy con esa posición, por favor.
Okay, Percy say in the beekeepers of Peru, many beekeepers in Peru, they don't make any treatment, but maybe that is the reason, because they don't have a production. Okay, what is your point of view about that practice without treatment?
It's the same thing in the United States. There are beekeepers who don't treat for Varroa also.
Es el mismo punto de vista que yo les daría a los apicultores de los Estados Unidos que no hacen tratamiento alguno.
And they don't make as much money as those beekeepers who do treat.
Esos apicultores no van a hacer dinero si es que no hacen tratamiento.
Many of us are in the business here to make money.
Bueno, si este es un negocio, lo que tú quieres es hacer dinero.
Correcto.
Claro,
Pablo,
lo que iba a preguntar en la misma línea es que nosotros, los apicultores, en busca de la selección, entre comillas, de la superabeja, cada vez al mismo tiempo estamos criando o teniendo colonias o colmenas más dependientes, ¿verdad? Más dependientes de tratamiento, dependientes de las condiciones que le pueda dar el apicultor para que la colonia se mantenga en el tiempo. Entonces,
espérame, Pablo.
¿qué importancia,
Espérame,
Randy?
Pablo,
espérame.
Pablo, no te vayas largo para que pueda traducirlo. Pablo, no te vayas largo.
Ok.
Sorry.
Okay. Te la resumo.
Sí, por favor, entramos cortos.
Sí, ok. Cada vez tenemos abejas más dependientes del apicultor, ¿no es cierto?
Okay.
Y quisiéramos al mismo tiempo, dentro de la selección, tiene que tener abejas también más resistentes, que no dependan tanto del apicultor para poder salvar situaciones como la varroa.
Okay. The bees every time depend more of the beekeeper because we are making a selection. But we don't have a bees who depend more than today. Maybe next day is more dependent in a sanitary point.
Okay.
¿Sí? O sea,
Okay,
el punto sanitario es muy dependiente del apicultor, ¿verdad? Ese es tu punto. ¿Pablo?
Sí. Sí, ok.
Ahora acaba tu... Randy, please. And the question is... Ok, Pablo, tu pregunta es...
Esa, ¿por qué es tan dependiente del apicultor hoy por hoy? Eso.
Why? What's the reason? Because the dependence of the bees is more now.
The viruses evolve.
Porque los virus están evolucionando.
We're in the middle of an evolutionary process.
Están en medio de una evolución, es un proceso.
Eventually, all the bees will be resistant to Varroa.
Eventualmente, algún momento se van a volver resistentes a la varroa, todas las abejas.
In my operation, we only raise queens from colonies that did not need any Varroa treatment.
Él en su tratamiento está reproduciendo a abejas reinas que no tienen ningún tratamiento.
But progress is slow because the heritability of the trait is low.
El desarrollo es lento porque la heredibilidad en las abejas también es lenta.
But the colonies that control Varroa by themselves are often the most productive colonies in the yard.
Cuando las colonias son autodefensivas de la varroa, son poco a poco colonias más productivas.
And they are also very gentle bees, but they're European stock.
También son mucho más amigables, más mansas, más dóciles, como las europeas.
But that may be difficult in your situation with all the feral, all the wild Africanized bees to breed them.
Posiblemente nuestro gran problema sea todas las abejas silvestres que están ahí como abejas africanizadas.
Unless you have some high elevation mating yards where there are no Africanized bees.
Sorry, the first time, can you repeat, please?
Yeah, unless you have high elevation, like up in the mountains, where it's too cold for the Africanized bees, then you could do pure matings with the gentle European bees.
Oh, tal vez podemos subir a zonas más elevadas, más frías, para poder hacer los cruces de abejas europeas.
Yeah. We do this in California. I sell gentle bees down to Southern California where it's all Africanized.
Es lo que hacen en California, suben a la parte alta para no correr riesgos de cruces con africanizadas. Por favor, Víctor, tu pregunta.
Buenas noches, doctor.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches, estimados amigos apicultores del mundo. Mi pregunta es la siguiente, doctor. El año pasado recorrimos costa, sierra y selva con Johnny al Perú. Y encontramos...
Víctor, corta, dale un párrafo para que lo traduzca Randy, para que no se haga grande el...
He say Victor and Johnny was walking around of Peru, the coast, byways and mountains. And adelante, Víctor, tu pregunta.
Encontramos Varroa principalmente en la selva y en zonas calurosas y menos en la sierra.
They find the Varroa on the jungle, the most quantity.
Okay.
Okay. Sigue, Víctor.
Okay, so selva is jungle. Selva is jungle.
Yes, selva is jungle.
Okay.
A jungle. Go. Adelante, Víctor.
Mi pregunta es, si las africanizadas son más resistentes, ¿por qué hay más incidencia en la selva y en zonas calurosas que en la sierra?
Yes, so the Africanized bees are not always resistant.
Es que no son resistentes las africanas.
Ok, gracias.
Some of them are, and some of them aren't.
Sí, algunas lo son, otras no lo son. Unas van a ser más, otras menos.
Ya. Enseñamos a los apicultores a tratar la Varroa con Johnny y al siguiente año sus cosechas se duplicaron.
They teach, both Johnny and Victor teach to beekeepers, teach to make a treatment, and the next year has a double by 2 the productions.
Yeah, no surprise.
No debería ser ninguna sorpresa.
Yeah, the treatments can be organic and they can be very inexpensive.
Los tratamientos orgánicos son muy sin costo, sin gasto, no sé, muy económicos.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cheap.
In our operation, we don't use any synthetic miticides.
En sus operaciones ellos no utilizan ningún medicamento sintético.
Excelente. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Grevi.
Yes.
Grevi.
Adelante.
Por favor, justamente esa era mi pregunta. A mí no me gusta utilizar químicos en realidad, porque a la larga crean resistencia, ¿no? Como en la ganadería, amitralla, etcétera, etcétera. ¿Puedo usar todo el año orgánico, tratamiento orgánico, y mis abejas, así no contamino miel, polen y propóleo? ¿Se puede?
The doctor have a question. He say he don't use synthetic treatments. If it is possible, treat around the year with organic products.
Absolutely. That's what we do.
Es lo que él hace, lo trata todo el año y va bien.
We use oxalic acid, formic acid, and timol.
Utiliza ácido oxálico, timol y
Formico.
Y el ácido fórmico. Sorry.
Ácido fórmico.
Yo tengo dos preguntas, pero en relación a esa respuesta, ¿me están escuchando?
Sí, adelante.
¿Ya?
Adelante. Buenas noches.
El control biológico es muy importante. Quisiera saber si es que ya se hacen crianzas o han encontrado enemigos naturales de Varroa, controladores biológicos, y si se han usado entomopatógenos para el control de Varroa, entomopatógenos. Yo tuve una experiencia con Bauberia, apliqué Bauberia a una caja, a una colmena para ver si es que moría la abeja y porque el control era para Varroa. y no moría la abeja. Sí.
Okay, so see. The biological control, she practiced. She make one treatment, and you know some natural natural stuff, insects or virus or fungi. So do you know something to make a treatment? Biological treatment.
There are some being developed right now. Go ahead.
Sorry, again, please.
Oh, there are some in the process of development.
Ellos están desarrollando algo ahora.
Okay, so the fungus Hirsutella and the fungus Metarhizium have promise.
Dos hongos, el hongo, bueno, los escuchaste.
Hirsutella, sí. I know it. Yo probé con Beauveria bassiana.
She applied Beauveria bassiana.
Sí.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay, you've had good luck with it?
¿Tú has tenido suerte con esto?
Yes, el control con Beauveria bassiana. Bueno, fue un control. Mi idea era que podía afectar a la abeja. Entonces, como se alimenta de quitina este hongo, pensé que le podía afectar a la abeja, pero no encontré efecto negativo en la abeja, más por el contrario, positivo para el control de varroa. Todavía no es un gran control, pero vamos avanzando. O sea, mientras que más hagamos ensayos, puede que se adapte a el control de varroa.
Okay. The Beauveria eat quitina, and that's the reason because Rocio was thinking maybe make a damage of the bees. And the result now is good, but she making another practice to try to find something with Beauveria.
Okay. The problem with the funguses is they need to do directed evolution. So directed evolution is doing many cycles of reproduction so they can tolerate the hive environment.
Okay, el problema con los hongos es que su ciclo reproductivo tienes que hacerlo muchas veces.
Many of the funguses cannot tolerate the high temperature in the hive.
Muchos de los hongos no pueden tolerar la temperatura del interior de la colmena.
Or it's hard to keep the spores viable in order to apply them to the hive.
Se vuelve muy difícil el que las esporas puedan replicarse nuevamente al interior de la colonia.
But there's great promise in those treatments.
Pero es una buena promesa dentro de los tratamientos.
Claro, pero en lo inmediato, ¿qué recomendaríamos a los apicultores que nos están viendo en este minuto? La importancia de la toma de muestras, de saber qué porcentaje de varroa hay en nuestras colonias antes de decidir una aplicación.
And now, if you, ¿cómo se dice consejo? Johnny, how do you say consejo?
What you
or recommendation
us or advice? What
Advice.
Do you have some advices to the beekeepers to make a test, and what is the point to make a decision to make a treatment?
What we do is, let me think about how to say this quickly. I've designed portable battery-powered agitators so that I can do a wash of a sample of bees very quickly to determine the infestation rate.
Okay. Lo que ha diseñado es una batería de pruebas para determinar el porcentaje de varroa.
We're going to sample 1,000 hives this week.
hace ejemplos, o sea, toma muestras, hace el muestreo con miles de abejas.
And we will know exactly the infestation rate of all 1,000 hives this week.
Para saber exactamente cuál es el porcentaje de infestación de esa semana.
And those that don't need treatment will not get treated.
Muchas veces no necesita hacer tratamiento porque no lo exige.
And those that need treatment will get treated.
Y otras necesitan tratamiento y a esas sí les hace tratamiento.
And it doesn't cost us that much money to do so.
Y así sus costos no son muy caros, tratando a las que tiene que tratar.
Pablo.
Ok, Johnny.
Pablo, tu micrófono. Pablo, tu parlante, tu audífono, tu micrófono.
Tu micrófono, Pablo.
Pablo,
ese era el punto.
Tú quieres hacer la pregunta. Yo voy a hacer la pregunta. Randy, Pablo say, what kind of advice you can give us to the beekeepers never make tests his hives to checking for Varroa mites?
We have an expression in English. You can't cure stupid. You can't. It's not our job to make everybody smart.
La pregunta, amigos, era ¿qué consejo daría a los apicultores que nunca han hecho pruebas o no hacen pruebas por la varroa? Esa ha sido la pregunta. ¿Y cuál ha sido la respuesta, mi estimado Gravy?
Sería algo estúpido no hacerlo. Nuestra tarea es ser cada día mejores. Entonces,
this is business. Some people are good at a business and some people don't make money.
Este es un negocio y alguna gente en negocios hace dinero y otra gente no.
Es ahí el punto, que muchos dicen que hay que controlar la varroa y controlan sin saber cuánto tienen, si no tienen. A lo mejor están botando dinero al hacer un tratamiento y en realidad la colmena no lo está exigiendo. Entonces, es ahí donde radica la importancia del muestreo, ¿no? Sea cual sea que apliquemos.
That's a main point. Many people make a treatment acknowledging how many rate of Varroa have, the infestation percentage. And right. Maybe if you have the average of infestation, you don't lose your money.
But here in the United States, beekeepers look at which beekeepers are driving new pickup trucks, and they copy the ones that are making money.
Ahí en Estados Unidos, algunos apicultores están mirando cómo otros apicultores se compran camionetas nuevas.
Y son los que están tratando las abejas y están haciendo plata. Y los que no tratan sus abejas solo miran y siguen andando en camionetas viejas.
And there are some beekeepers who are always complaining, and there are some beekeepers that make money.
Algunos apicultores solamente cumplen haciéndolo y otros están haciendo dinero.
Algunos apicultores se quejan del sistema o el tratamiento y algunos están haciendo plata. Buena, Gravy.
Ok, doctora Abeja, por favor, su pregunta.
Siga, doctorita. Pregunto yo después de la doctora. Siga, por favor.
Okay.
Quiero preguntar, todos los insectos tienen comportamiento, ¿no? Y de acuerdo a este comportamiento de la varroa, ¿en qué hora del día es más activa? ¿En qué momento es que está entrando a las celdas con las larvas? Para poder en ese momento hacer una aplicación mejor, un mejor control de varroa.
Una mejor aplicación, okay.
Así es.
Okay, every insect have a behavior. Maybe you know which hour is better to apply a treatment. The varroa prefer some hour of the day to introduce of the cell.
I haven't noticed any difference. Most of the treatments that we use take a few days to be effective, so the hour of the day is not important.
Muchos de los tratamientos que ellos están aplicando duran pocas horas, por consiguiente no es tan importante la hora.
Our favorite treatment now is the extended release oxalic acid.
El mejor tratamiento que están usando es el de introducir ácido oxálico.
And that takes 70 days for full efficacy, over 2 months.
Está por más de 70 días al interior de la colonia y son sobre los 2 meses, ¿no? Superando los 2 meses.
Okay.
Johnny.
Eso sí, pregunto, entonces el tratamiento contra la varroa que él da pasa los 70 días.
Your treatment is over to 70 days.
Yeah,
sí,
and
sí.
it costs pennies and it eliminates the mites.
En costos son centavos para eliminar a la varroa. Doctor Abeja, ahora sí.
Bueno, mi pregunta era, como vivimos aquí en el Ecuador, ¿verdad? Zona tórrida, no tenemos las 4 estaciones. ¿Cada qué tiempo debo diagnosticar varroa en mi colmena, justamente, no? ¿Y cada qué tiempo debo dar el tratamiento? Ya nos dijo ahora 70 días. Pero ¿cada qué tiempo debo hacer el diagnóstico?
In Ecuador, how many times, how many months, how many weeks he need make take the average of the varroa?
Okay, in general, you need to do 3 90% reductions in the mite population.
Sorry, the question
yeah.
is how many times? Maybe 1 month per 2 months or every 3 months. He need make a test of determine the average, the percentage, the rate.
Oh, the testing?
Yes, testing.
We generally do it once a year.
Just one a year?
Yeah.
Which month? In cold time?
We do it in early summer.
Oh. Bueno, lo hace una vez al año y lo hace al inicio del verano.
And then we spot test hives throughout the year. Spot test means you look at it just a few hives throughout the year.
Okay, y otras las hace a medio año en algunas colonias.
2 veces al año, ok. Porcentaje mínimo de varroa para dar tratamiento.
What is the minimum rate to make a treatment? To make a treatment?
That's covered in the video.
Eso lo vas a cubrir en el video. Ahí está la información.
Yeah. The video is about understanding Varroa population dynamics.
En el video vas a poder entender la dinámica de la población de la varroa, ¿no?
Right. So instead of asking somebody for advice, if you understand the biology, you can make your own decisions.
Una vez que se entiende la biología, es mucho más fácil tomar decisiones y hacer acciones.
I don't like to give advice. I like to explain the biology.
No quiere tomar ventaja todavía, no quiere adelantarse, va a explicar la biología. Víctor.
Una consulta, doctor. ¿Cuál es el tiempo mínimo que tiene que estar el principio activo a dosis continua, ya sea orgánico o ya sea convencional, dentro de la colmena para eliminar todo el ciclo biológico de la varroa?
What is the minimum time to apply the product?
It depends upon the product. So for timol, it takes about 20 days.
Depende del producto. Para el timol deben ser 20 días.
For formic acid, about 5 days.
Para el ácido fórmico, 5 días.
For oxalic acid applied as a dribble, when there's no brood, it takes 2 days.
Cuando no hay cría, el ácido oxálico, 2 días.
And the oxalic acid, as an extended release with glycerin, it takes about 40 days to start to see good efficacy.
Cuando está aplicado con glicerina, hasta 40 días.
So the main thing is to be proactive rather than reactive. Do you know those words?
Yes.
Okay.
Lo más importante ahí es ser proactivo, no reactivo.
Sí.
Antes de, no después de. Gracias. De todas maneras, no me ha aclarado, porque si es 2 días, solamente mato los ácaros grandes. Lo que yo le pregunto es, ¿cuánto es el tiempo mínimo a dosis continua para eliminar todo el ciclo biológico de la varroa adulta, de la varroa en larva y del huevo de la varroa, ¿no? No, yo en 2 días mato lo que está encima.
The biological cycle of the varroa is many days. And what happens if the treatment is just 2 days, just killing the varroa of adult varroa? Mm-hmm. And what happened if I tried just 2 days?
It will not be efficacious if there is brood in the colony.
Again, please, with another words.
The short-term treatments are only efficacious if there is no brood in the colony.
Okay. Las aplicaciones cortas solamente son cuando no hay cría abierta en la colonia.
So the long-term treatments have to be used if there's brood in the colony.
Y los tratamientos largos son cuando tú tienes cría en la colonia. Está más referido, a mi entender, I tried to say during the winter with European honeybee, they don't have a brood.
Right.
And because it's winter. Mm-hmm. Yes. And they don't have a brood. All the varroa is externally. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then what many Europeans do is they create an artificial brood break so they can use the short-term treatments.
Okay, es una actitud que tienen las abejas europeas que durante el invierno no tienen cría, hacen un corte artificial de la cría, por consiguiente solo tienen abeja adulta y toda la varroa que va a existir en ese momento es varroa adulta, varroa en su fase forética, no va a haber en su fase reproductiva.
Mm-hmm. And I show that in the video.
Eso se observa en el video. Adelante, abajo de Pablo. Sí.
Don Franklin.
Don Franklin, por favor, si no alcanzo a leer el nombre. Franklin, por favor, su pregunta.
Queridos amigos, reciban un cordial saludo de acá desde Ecuador. Para el doctor Randy, también un cordial saludo de los apicultores de acá. De mi país es un privilegio siempre mirar estas conferencias y los conocimientos que nos imparten. Acá en nuestra zona tropical, yo hago mi apicultura en una zona caliente, más o menos una temperatura de 38, 40 grados de temperatura. ¿Qué me recomendaría para romper el ciclo reproductivo de la varroa? Y también para la selección genética, ¿qué me recomendaría, doctor? Muchas gracias y un abrazo fuerte para todos.
Okay, Franklin is from Ecuador. He's a beekeeper in a tropical area, 38, 40 grades centigrade, and he want to know algún consejo, some
treatments to use when it's hot.
Yeah, he want to know un consejo, caramba, la palabra consejo se me ha ido. Advice. He want to know some advice to improve his selection, genetic selection, and to cut the cycle of the Varroa.
No, Gravy, Randy, he is asking what kind of advice you can give him to cut the Varroa mites. He is asking for advice in the tropical place to cut the circle life from the Varroa mites.
Well, we have good luck with the TMO. We have good luck with the extended oxalic acid, even in hot weather.
Ellos han tenido muy buenos resultados con ácido oxálico y con ácido fórmico en zonas calientes, zonas calurosas.
Yeah, 35 degrees, sometimes 40 degrees.
Entre 35 y a veces 40 grados de temperatura. Ok, Pablo.
Gravy.
Claro, por lo que escuchamos de...
Pablo, para no perdernos... Sí. Hay una pregunta que hizo Víctor Valdivia y no le hemos preguntado bien. Gravy, lo que Víctor está preguntando es que ¿cuánto es el tiempo correcto para romper el círculo del desarrollo de la varroa? Eso es lo que él quiere saber, ¿no? ¿Cuántos días?
Yo pregunté también eso, ¿sabes?
¿No? Entonces, ¿cuánto es el...? Esa es la pregunta en sí en conciso. Lo que pasa es que Víctor habla mucho.
Tal vez no me he dejado entender yo al momento de traducir. Lo que indicó Randy es que depende del producto. Y también hay otro factor que hay que tomar en cuenta, que la abeja europea en su ciclo invernal solamente tiene abeja adulta y no cría. Por consiguiente, si tú vas a aplicar cuando tiene cría, va a ser un tiempo más largo, dependiendo del producto que ya se ha indicado. Y cuando no tiene cría, cuando está en situación invernal y solamente hay abeja adulta, su aplicación también va a ser diferente. Randy, I say the application of any treatment depends of the product and depend of the situation of the beehive. If have a brood or not have a brood.
Right.
Yes?
Yes. In California,
yes.
In California, in many areas, we have brood all year round, similar to you.
En California, en algunos lugares, tienen cría todo el año, igual que nosotros.
Question, Randy. For the beekeepers, has colony in activity all year. How long can be the right treatment? 44 days? 50 days? Or 70 days?
Easily. If you have brood all year round, it will take 3 or 4 treatments that kill 90% of the mites. So 3 or 4 treatments throughout the year. Each treatment needs to kill 90% of the mites.
Ok, ustedes necesitan hacer entre 3 o 4 tratamientos al año para eliminar su varroa.
Pablo. ¿Cuánto tiempo de consecutividad debe tener entre, o sea, son 4 tratamientos al año, pero se tiene que poner a los 7 días o a los 10 días para poder terminar el ciclo?
How many times between treatments?
mathematically, it doesn't make any difference.
Matemáticamente no va a hacer ninguna diferencia.
Mm-hmm. But practically, you can generally get by for maybe 3 months. It's all dependent upon how low you take the mite level.
Todo depende cuán bajo vas a mantener el nivel de infestación de la varroa.
Yeah, if you can take it down to 0, you can buy almost a year of time.
Si tú vas a intentar bajar hasta 0, te va a tomar todo el año.
But most beekeepers don't take it down to 0.
La mayoría de los apicultores no llegan a 0. Ok, Pablo.
Ya, por lo que Mr. Randy dice, el ácido oxálico, al tener un 70 días dentro de la colonia, dentro de la colmena, sería el producto que tiene mayor eficacia y de mayor facilidad para aplicar. En relación al sustrato que usa, agua, glicerina u otro tipo de sustrato para preparar el oxálico.
The oxalic acid maybe is the best results for you. And what is the substrate? Vaseline, water,
Glycerin.
or glycerin.
Glicerina o sublimado.
On a cellulose pad.
Y una base de celulosa.
Mm-hmm.
Cartón, like a cardboard, yes?
Cardboard works. There are some cellulose sponges that work even better. And I'm currently testing some other industrial absorbent pads.
Okay. El cartón puede trabajar, pero realmente es una celulosa trabajada de una manera industrial.
Yeah. This is an avenue of research that I am trying to determine the best substrate.
Están todavía en ese camino, en esa avenida, de definir cuál es el mejor substrato para estos tratamientos.
And if you could get somebody to translate the latest article at my website, that would answer that question.
Okay. Van a encontrar más respuestas en una publicación que se puede traducir, si alguien puede traducir, que está en su sitio web.
And there are details in that article.
Hay muchos detalles en ese artículo.
¿Alguna experiencia con sublimación de ácido oxálico?
Do you have some experience applying oxalic acid by sublimation?
Yes, I'm not impressed.
Sí, pero nada impresionado.
It takes numerous applications.
Tienes que hacer numerosas aplicaciones.
And it's dangerous to the applicator.
Y es peligroso para el apicultor.
There's much safer and less expensive methods of applying oxalic acid.
La manera más barata y fácil de aplicar es la del cartón, la de celulosa.
Yo tuve una experiencia en Inagro Olmos, que es una zona muy cálida, espolvoreando ácido oxálico más azúcar impalpable aproximadamente al mediodía, con esa temperatura de más de 30 grados centígrados. Supuestamente hizo más temperatura dentro de la colmena y las abejas, gran parte se murieron con el ácido oxálico.
Ok, Rocío, espérame, por favor. She have an experience. She applied powdered sugar mixed with oxalic acid, and the temperature out was 30 degrees, and inside more than 30 degrees, of course 36 maybe, but the many bees die.
Right. We do not mix oxalic acid with sugar because the bees will then eat it and that will kill them.
Claro, ellos nunca aplicarían azúcar con ácido oxálico, porque en el momento que lo van a comer van a morir.
You don't want the bees to eat the oxalic acid.
Ellos no intentan que la abeja coma el ácido oxálico.
Sí.
The temperature had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
La temperatura no tiene nada que ver en esa experiencia.
Okay. Thanks.
Randy, I have a question. The cost of the oxalic acid in cellulose, how much is the cost per colony per year to make a good treatment? In dollars.
Boy, I mean, I need to do the calculation. I think it's less than $1. It's very little. I can tell you right now, it takes somewhere between 25 and 50 grams of oxalic acid. We buy it in the 25 kilo bags, so it's very inexpensive.
You prepare your oxalic acid, yes?
Yes.
Do you have the recipe?
Yeah, it's on my website in that article.
Ok, yo le pregunté cuál es el costo de tratamiento por colmena por año. Él me dice que los costos realmente son muy bajos y que él compra sus insumos. Entonces yo le pregunté si él es el que prepara su medicación con ácido oxálico. Y me contesta, me dice que sí, que tiene la información y que va a estar o que está en su web. The recipe is in your web, yes?
Yeah, but it's experimental. So I have the results of the experiments that I'm doing, but I do not give any advice.
Okay. Es una fase experimental y la receta está en su web. Y bueno, no es un resultado final, ¿no? Se sigue trabajando. Ok, Pablo.
I report on the results of my studies in detail at my website.
Okay. Está un reporte con todos sus resultados en su website. Ok, Pablo.
Para el apicultor de campo que está todos los días trabajando en sus colmenas y que está observando, que no tiene una capacitación técnica avanzada como para tomar decisiones del control de Varroa.
Ok, Pablo.
Sí.
For the beekeeper who is working every day on the field and who he don't have a more studies. Ok, Pablo, adelante.
Claro, ¿cómo identificar el punto exacto para el control antes de que la colmena tenga un no retorno?
How he the beekeeper, how needs today to determine what is the best moment to apply the treatment before, of course, lose the beehive.
Okay. That is explained in the video, Understanding the Population Dynamics of Varroa.
Eso precisamente está en el video, entendiendo la dinámica poblacional de la Varroa.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tell you how to manage your beehives.
Okay. Es difícil decirnos que él nos diga cómo manejar nuestras abejas.
I'm going to explain the biology and allow you to make your own decisions.
Explicándonos la biología y nosotros comprendiendo, vamos a aprender a tomar nuestras decisiones.
Vamos al video entonces.
Randy,
okay.
I have one more question from beekeeper from Peru, Fernando Cabrera.
Uh-huh.
He say he used the oxalic acid en toallas, ¿cómo se llama? En little towels.
Towels.
Evaporate the gas. You have experience with this stuff? You use acid oxalic and towels?
Yes.
Working good?
Yeah, it works. It can work good, but on the cellulose sponges, it works better.
Fernando, sí.
Puede trabajar mejor si está en una esponja de celulosa.
One more question. I have question from other beekeeper. What do you think the treatment with synthetic treatment? We have the recommendation with the synthetic treatment is going to be 44 days in the hive. When we treat with organic treatments, we need to treat 44 days constantly too?
It depends upon the treatment. With T-Mol, no, it's 20 days. With oxalic acid dissolved in glycerin, yeah, it's 40 to 50 days. With formic acid, it's 5 days. Each one is different.
Bueno, la pregunta era
si la hago yo, Gravy. Le pregunté, de acuerdo a los productos químicos, se recomienda que la tira debe estar 44 días. Eso fue la pregunta que le hice. La respuesta tú, Gravy.
Que está bien que puede estar entre 44 y 50, pero mucho depende del producto que se vaya a aplicar.
Y habló del ácido oxálico fórmico que tienen diferentes días de tratamiento.
Así. How many days is the formic acid, Randy?
It's about 5 days, and then it's all evaporated.
El ácido fórmico trabaja por evaporación y es suficiente 5 días.
But it's more difficult to use when the weather is hot.
Pero es mucho más difícil usarlo cuando el clima es caliente.
Okay, question, Randy. In America, when I used to treat with formic acid, I remember I used to put 3 times continually. I think I remember I put even every 7 days. I put 1 towel 7 days. After 7 days again. After 7 days again, 3 treatments. With that, give me the guarantee it's going to be good.
Yeah, it may even take more if you're using a towel. In Canada, they recommend 5 treatments like that.
Okay, now it's using 5. Okay, I'm telling you that was 25 years ago. We used 3 times, now it's 5 times more. Le comenté que hace 25 años atrás, cuando empecé a tratar con ácido fórmico, el tratamiento era de cada 7 días, que se ponía unas toallas que se evaporaban, que hacía un ciclo de 21 días a 28 días, pero ahora el tratamiento con ácido fórmico en Canadá recomiendan 5 tratamientos, amigos.
It all depends upon how you apply the formic acid. There's many different ways of applying formic acid.
Okay, to understand. Okay, todo depende en qué forma usamos los productos, ¿no? Porque pueden ver productos que se diluyan en 40 a 45 días, como hay algunos productos orgánicos que se está vendiendo en el mercado y tienen un ciclo de 44 días que se diluye y tiene que estar dentro de la colmena.
So with formic acid, you can kill all the mites in the hive overnight. Go ahead.
You can kill everything. And what happened with the
Go
mice?
ahead and translate that.
Con el ácido fórmico podemos matar toda la varroa en un solo tratamiento de un día para otro.
But you will also kill the queen.
Y también pueden matar la reina. Entonces hay que enclaustrar la reina. Tenemos que enclaustrar la reina.
But if you remove the queen first, you can kill all the mites and put the queen back in overnight.
Eso es lo que tendríamos que hacer. Si nosotros enclaustramos la reina y podemos utilizar el ácido fórmico y podemos matar toda la varroa de un día para otro. My question is this, Randy. What happened with the varroa mites inside the brood when we treat with formic acid and that treatment?
If you put it on strong enough, it kills them all. Oh.
Translate.
Okay, but it's a delicate balance. If you put it on too strong, it will kill some of the bees too.
Yeah, maybe the brood. Yes.
If you put it on too strong, but you can kill all the mites and hardly kill any bees other than the queen.
Wow.
We do it all the time.
Ok, depende de la concentración que uno aplique. Si uno aplica muy concentrado, puede matar no solamente a la abeja, a las abejas, sino también a la reina. Puedes matar todo lo que está en tu colonia.
It's called the flash treatment, like a flash of light. It just takes a few hours.
Sí. Ellos lo llaman como un rayo, ¿no? Como un relámpago que elimina todo.
But you need to learn how to do it properly.
Sorry.
¿Y ese ácido en qué consideración está?
You need to learn how to do this properly. You can't just go out and pour formic acid in your hive or you'll kill all the bees.
Tenemos que aprender correctamente a utilizar este producto porque no podemos utilizar el producto y matar nuestras abejas y matar nuestras... ¿no? Qué interesante
y la Varroa.
Qué interesante.
¿En qué porcentaje utiliza Gravy? ¿En qué porcentaje el ácido fórmico?
Okay. What is the good percentage of formic acid to apply? Not killing the queen, the bees, just kill the Varroa.
I do not like to give specific recommendations.
Él no puede darnos una recomendación. Hay algún celular que está prendido y está haciendo retorno.
I have detailed information on my website, but it's in English. But you're welcome to translate it.
Randy tiene en su web toda la información, todo está en inglés y sería interesante que alguien lo traduzca.
If I give you specific instructions, you're going to do something wrong and then you're going to be mad at me.
Él puede dar todas las instrucciones y si hiciste algo mal, bueno, pues le preguntamos a Randy.
No, lo que él dijo que van a estar molestos con él si es que las cosas no salen mal. Pero quiero comentarles a todos en la red, si ustedes van a su página web que está en inglés y ustedes van en Google Translate, pegan esa página, la página se los va a traducir completamente al español. Toda la página se los va a convertir al español y ustedes van a poder leer toditito. Existe muchísima información cuantificada, validada, que realmente les va a ayudar mucho a esclarecer lo que él está haciendo en los Estados Unidos y está compartiendo en la apicultura mundial, ¿no? Así es que, amigos, los que no conocen quién es Randy Oliver es un biólogo de profesión que se dedica a la apicultura y parte de su vida se ha dedicado a la investigación de las abejas. Él ha escrito y ha recorrido el mundo compartiendo temas muy importantes que ha ayudado la apicultura de los Estados Unidos y es considerado una de las personalidades de mayor visión científica y ayuda en la apicultura mundial. Es un privilegio para nosotros los apicultores del Perú, Latinoamérica, que lo tengamos hoy día y se nos haya permitido poder conversar en una perspectiva amplia de confianza y amistad que nos ha brindado hoy día el doctor Randy Oliver. Así que, amigos, si hay alguna pregunta más para poder seguir y ya poner el video.
Sí, solo unita. Ha probado en tiras, en vez de la glicerina y el ácido oxálico o el amitraz, utilizar aceite en vez de glicerina.
Have you tried with some oil and no glycerin?
Oxalic acid does not dissolve in oil.
El ácido oxálico no se disuelve en aceite.
Okay.
So, Johnny, I need to go. I caretake my mother, my elderly mother. I need to go feed her dinner.
No, that's why I was telling to the people, because already we are 1 hour with you. We are 1 hour with you. I was telling to the people, no, was nice from your part, give us this time to us in South America, Latin America, from where we hear lots about you, but never we have contact with you.
Yes, okay? Absolutely. Go ahead and watch the video and set up another question and answer, and I'd be happy to come back again.
Vamos a ver el video y vamos a programar una nueva reunión para poder tener mejor las preguntas y poder tener mejor entendimiento de todo el trabajo que él está haciendo. Muchas gracias, Randy. Despídanse ustedes. Víctor, denle palabras de agradecimiento, hermanos, para ya poner el video. ¿Qué les parece?
Excelente. Okay. Muchas gracias, doctor, por darnos la oportunidad de poder escucharlo y compartir con todos. Un grande abrazo desde Perú y lo esperamos que venga a visitarnos cuando
un grande abrazo también.
Gracias.
Okay, buenas noches.
Okay. Thank you so much. We really appreciate all your time. Thank you, Randy.
You bet. Anytime.
Me llamo Randy Oliver. Soy apicultor.
Gracias, Randy.
California.
Okay.
Pero
¿alguien más que quiera hablar?
Un poquito de español.
Agradecida. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Randy. Bye.
Sus conocimientos.
Gracias.
Buenas noches.
Gracias, Gravy, por ayudarnos con la traducción. Realmente nos has hecho llegar mucho conocimiento. Pablo, gracias, Víctor, gracias, Rocío Moreno, gracias, doctor Abeja, gracias, Franklin, gracias, John Freddy, que no pudiste conectarte bien por cuestiones de la señal. Gracias, Isabel Irene Cuevas, por haber ingresado. Pero vamos a organizar una nueva reunión, como él mismo ya se ha ofrecido, para poder interactuar, intercambiar en un tiempo más amplio. Así es que estamos en contacto para poder reunirnos. Yo creo que ya de aquí nos vamos a sentar a ver el video. Así es que pongamos el video a todos los amigos que están conectados. Aquí viene el video, amigos, que ha sido traducido porque lamentablemente en el momento que Senasa Perú hizo el trabajo de poder contactar a Randy, no pudimos tener el traductor en ese momento para la conferencia de hace 2 días, que fue el día jueves, en el día de la abeja mundial, amigos. Entonces, gracias a Senasa Perú, quien nos ha facilitado el video, y Conapi Perú en estos momentos lo va a volver a retransmitir para todos los apicultores del Perú, Latinoamérica, que cada vez más vamos avanzando y vamos empujando esta apicultura que viene creciendo a pasos agigantados. ¿Alguno de los presentes que quisiese hablar o quisiese dirigir algunas palabras, amigos, o hacer un análisis de esta presentación antes del video?
Gracias, Randy. Gracias, ingeniero Johnny Rojas. Gravy por la traducción, muy amable. Pablito Astorga, a todos los amigos que están presentes, la señora Irenite Cuevas, a todos. Pero muchas gracias, Randy. En realidad ha sido muy bueno, ¿no? Ingeniero Johnny, ha sido excelente la exposición de nuestro amigo de Estados Unidos para mejorar nuestra apicultura, ya sea acá en el Perú, en Ecuador y en todo el mundo, ¿no? En Latinoamérica. Y a mí me pareció maravilloso, en realidad, el tratamiento con productos orgánicos. Yo siempre abogaré por productos orgánicos porque de esta manera no contaminamos ni la miel ni el resto de productos que son de consumo humano. Muchas gracias, ingeniero. Gracias, amigos. Un abrazo bien grande.
Bueno, a mí me toca disculparme por la traducción. Han habido varias partes que se convirtió esto un examen, pero del TOEFL de alto nivel, por el nivel técnico del que se hablaba. Pero bueno, haciendo de tripas corazón, mil disculpas por eso. Gracias, ha estado muy interesante. Nos sirve mucho para aprender y para afirmar algunos de los conocimientos que ya por ahí andábamos leyendo. Siempre conversar con quien lo escribe es muy diferente. Mil gracias.
Pablo.
Sí, Johnny, y muchas gracias por la invitación. La verdad que tuve que correr para poder estar ahora presente, y justamente estaba en la aplicación de ácido oxálico sublimado, gasificado. Como nosotros no tenemos cría acá, en nuestra zona ya estamos invernando con nuestras colonias, son abejas europeas, por lo tanto reducen prácticamente a cero la cría, y resulta un tratamiento bastante eficiente. No así en el caso de los diferentes climas que tienen, como en Perú, Colombia, Ecuador, ¿no es cierto? Y también en Estados Unidos, California, donde está Randy. Por lo tanto, los grados de eficiencia de los productos que estamos usando también dependen mucho de la zona en donde los aplicamos. Pero colgándome a las palabras del doctor Abeja, siempre es mejor, ¿verdad?, empezar con esta curva de control con los productos orgánicos, y así poder entregar productos, valga la redundancia, de mejor calidad y más sanos para nuestra población. Así que muchas gracias Grady por la traducción, y a todos, y un saludo especial ahí a mi amiga Isabel, que la veo también por ahí.
Muy bueno tenerte nuevamente, Isabel, con nosotros.
Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Así es, Isabel, un gusto de tenerte.
Bueno, qué lindo verlos a todos otra vez. Lamento haber entrado un poco tarde, pero estaba en una reunión también de Zoom con el grupo de productores que venimos acompañando desde Cambio Rural, y bueno, no podía estar en los 2 lugares, pero como siempre, imperdible las charlas, y también imperdible el poder participar, ¿no?, de estos encuentros, mirándolos a todos, amigos que ya son familia. Así que los saludo a todos, y bueno, esperaremos ver ese hermoso video.
¿Alguien más que quiera acotar? Franklin, a nombre de Ecuador.
Sí, Johnny, sí, nuevamente reiterando los agradecimientos de los compañeros, un privilegio siempre estar compartiendo con ustedes, con ustedes, que la mayoría son unos científicos de alto nivel, Pablito, Johnny, muchas gracias por la traducción, el doctor Abeja, que para nosotros es una gran ayuda acá como maestro universitario, siempre está compartiendo también el gusto de saludar a doña Isabelita, una grande de la apicultura. Estos tipos de charlas son lo que nos ayuda a progresar y avanzar. Sabemos que sin hacer tratamientos, sin actualizarnos, siempre vamos a estar rezagados. La apicultura no va a levantarse. En nuestros países principalmente no podemos estar a la espera de que están haciendo un trabajo por acá, de que siempre no progresemos, y si no tratamos la varroa, siempre vamos a estar rezagados. La varroa es una de las cosas más difíciles de tratar, por eso es que se le pone énfasis en este tema. Nuevamente, Johnny, te felicito, siempre tú con ese espíritu emprendedor, ese espíritu de colaborar con Latinoamérica. Eres un gran líder aquí que nos ayuda a todos, nos sentimos muy contentos de tenerte como amistad principalmente y como un líder apícola de Latinoamérica. Felicitaciones, doctor Randy, y un fuerte abrazo para todos ustedes. Dios los bendiga.
Gracias, Franklin. ¿Alguien más quiere acotar ya para poner el video, que la gente está pidiendo el video?
Gracias, Johnny, agradecerte por haberme incluido hoy en esta reunión. Es un compromiso para mí para poder, bueno, he dicho algunas experiencias que ya tenemos 7 años en el proyecto y que desde inicios se hicieron, digamos, mal o buenas, pero así a grandes rasgos he podido compartirles, ¿no? Sin embargo, pues como les digo, es un compromiso estar con grandes como ustedes. Agradezco mucho, yo soy bióloga de profesión y me quedo corta con ustedes. En realidad, tengo mucho que aprender. Muy agradecida, Johnny, muy agradecida con todos. Saludos, Isabelita. A ti te conozco con mucho cariño y agrado. Un abrazo.
Gracias, doctora. Gracias.
Saludo.
Realmente nos sorprendió usted con el trabajo que está haciendo, y realmente nos hace sentir orgullosos los peruanos que en el Perú se esté desarrollando esa investigación encabezada por usted. Esperemos que tenga muy buenos resultados y que en los próximos años podamos saber algo más sobre el trabajo que usted está desarrollando ahí con su equipo en bien de la apicultura del Perú. Gracias, doctora. Víctor.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Johnny, por hacer cada sábado un día más de capacitación. Sinceramente, cada sábado crecemos más con esas capacitaciones, escuchando a grandes personas, compartiendo sus experiencias. Espero que no paremos y este movimiento sea ya a nivel de Latinoamérica y a nivel de todo el mundo. Gracias, hermanos de Latinoamérica. Espero que algún día volvamos a encontrarnos y abrazarnos físicamente. Gracias.
Bueno, amigos, ahora sí vamos a poner el video, pero sin antes decirles que nuestra gran anfitriona María Fernanda hoy día no ha estado con nosotros, y para todos los admiradores de María Fernanda que están preguntando que por qué no está María Fernanda, ¿dónde está María Fernanda? María Fernanda viene el próximo sábado para estar nuevamente con todos nosotros, amigos. Dios les bendiga, y ahora sí vamos a compartir el video.
Bees in California on a commercial basis since the year 2001 without the use of any synthetic miticides, and we rarely lose a colony to Varroa. So I'd like to share with you what we've learned about Varroa management. It used to be much easier before Varroa arrived. And similar to us humans right now, who are experiencing a pandemic, when Varroa arrived, it kicked off a virus pandemic in our honeybees. That virus was deformed wing virus. There's other viruses also involved. This is the main one. And deformed wing virus is normally a relatively benign virus that can be transmitted via the eggs when the queen lays the eggs, or by the nurse bees when they feed the larvae. But it normally doesn't harm the bee to any extent. It only becomes a problem when we have this parasite right here vectoring the virus. And we're right in the middle of an evolutionary process in which the honeybee is needing to learn to adapt to having a parasite that feeds on its fat bodies, very critical in its body, and at the same time injects viruses into its blood. This is a real problem for the bees, and things are changing evolutionarily. You don't normally see, don't necessarily see bees with deformed wings while the virus is in the hive. You'll often start to see the brood start to die first before you see bees with deformed wings. Then we get to the point where we call it parasitic mite syndrome, where the brood starts to die wholesale, and pretty soon this colony will collapse. And what we'll see then is the colony depopulate, all the adult bees fly away, abandoning whatever brood there is there, and we'll see the telltale fecal deposits of the mites in the cells. So I'm going to come up with a number of concepts for Varroa management that have helped us to understand how to deal with the mite in our own operation. So the main concept is Varroa management is all about controlling the vector of the virus. It's not the mite that kills your colony, it's the viruses that kill the colony. And in this plot here, this is a plot of the mite infestation rate, mites per 100 bees in the hive, and over time right here. And that's this red line right here. And it shows how the mite infestation rate increases throughout the year. Once it gets above about 5 mites per 100 bees, the viruses go epidemic. So this is a plot for the deformed wing virus, the prevalence of highly infected worker bees in the hive. And this is for the paralytic viruses like cashmere bee virus or Israeli acute paralysis virus. You can see that virus prevalence exactly tracks the mite infestation rate in the hive. And with any kind of epidemic, human epidemic, such as malaria or dengue or yellow fever, the way you control the epidemic is by controlling the vector. You control mosquitoes, and then those mosquito transmitted diseases are not an issue. So we beekeepers, we need to control the Varroa mite to prevent the transmission of these viruses. The next concept regards how many treatments you need to do per year. And the number of necessary reductions is dependent upon the number of months that a colony is rearing brood. So the beekeepers up in Canada, where the colonies only rear brood for maybe 6 months a year, Varroa management is pretty easy for them. They can get by possibly with 1 treatment a year. Here in California, where we may have brood 12 months of the year, it's much more difficult. Anytime you see sealed brood in a hive, imagine that you're looking at Varroa food. So this is a big frame of Varroa food, and Varroa will be increasing rapidly. Anytime you see brood, that means mite reproduction is taking place. I have a mite model that you can easily download, Randy's Varroa model. It's free on the web, works on Excel. And you can put in how many months your colonies are rearing brood. So this is 6 months here. And it'll show the increase of the mite population. So starting with 1 mite, it will increase to about 50 mites over the course of 6 months. And then if there's a brood break due to winter weather or summer drought, then the mites will slowly decrease, but they won't increase completely back to the starting level. They wind up with 20 times the starting level. So that would mean this colony might survive for the first year, but the second year it's going to start with 20 times as many mites, and it won't make it through the second year. What I've done here is I've plotted out different numbers of months with brood, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, or 12 months. You can see with only 6 months of brood rearing, so if you're at a high elevation where you have a long winter, then the mites will build up a little bit and then they'll drop back down. 8 months of brood, the mites build up to maybe 200 times the starting count. 10 months, you're up to 700 times the starting count. And if you get up to 12 months of brood rearing, you're up to 1,000 times the starting count of mites. So much more difficult to control the mites where you have year-round brood rearing. The other thing I'm seeing is this is a record from our NOAA, our National Atmospheric Association, and it shows the temperature in November and January, so winter average temperature over the course of California history from 1895 through 2020. And this is my lifespan right here, this blue plot. You can see over my life, our winters have become much warmer in California, and our summers are much, much warmer in California. The point here is, notice you have some very warm winters, and you have some cold winters. In a cold winter, you have a longer brood break, so there's less Varroa reproduction. That Varroa starts later in the spring. On a very warm winter, Varroa may not shut down, or at least gets an earlier start. So following a warm winter, Varroa is going to be more difficult to manage than it will be following a cold winter. You can use Randy's Varroa model here. And this is a model, it shows the total population of bees in the hive. It's all customizable. The amount of sealed brood, so these would be pupae in the hive. The red would be the amount of the percentage of sealed brood that's infested by a mite. This would be your total mite count in the hive. And this would be a mite wash count of a half cup of bees, how many mites you'd find on a half cup of bees. And then down here, it tells you what the mite population is. You can put in how much mite immigration from outside. It'll show you the percentage of mites that are inside the brood at any time. Then these yellow cells, you can enter in your mite reductions by treatment. And for you guys in the Southern Hemisphere, type an X here and it will change all these dates for your calendar down there. As you see, if you only have moderate brood break during the winter, you could get by with 90% mite reductions, and that would keep the mites down to just barely to a reasonable level right here. If you lived in a Mediterranean climate, such as me here in California, where we have early brood rearing, and then during the dry summer, there's very little brood rearing, and then they ramp up a little bit in the fall, we need a minimum of 90% mite reductions throughout the season. That's only if there's not extensive immigration of mites. So I've got 250 mites coming in, immigrating in from outside here. As a California almond pollinator, it's much tougher. We need 4 mite reductions throughout the year to really keep our mites down to a low level. As you can see here, I started with 50 mites. I'm ending with 28 mites. So this would be a sustainable management plan right here. We'll talk later about what kinds of treatments you can use for these reductions. Okay, concept number 3. You get the most bang for your buck by getting your mites under control early in the spring and keeping them low. Mites reproduce at different rates. They're most effective at reproducing early in the spring when colonies are just about swarm condition, when they have lots of drone brood, a very high ratio of brood to worker bees in the hive, and mites reproduce very efficiently at that time. When I plot this out, so what I have here, this is the mite population. This is the change in mite population. This is the change in the honeybee population. If there's no change over each 15-day period, these lines would be right at this level. That's no change across here. So what you see, many people are under the misconception that the bees take off in the spring and leave Varroa behind, and Varroa catches up later. What this shows you is, in reality, Varroa takes off ahead of the bees in the spring and reproduces at a faster rate than the honeybees all throughout the season until they finally drop off when the colonies cease rearing brood. So this would be November for us, fall for us, when they cease rearing brood. The take-home message is that you get your most rapid rate of Varroa increase early in the season right here. So this is really the critical time to control Varroa. And Varroa increases exponentially in the hive as long as there is brood rearing going on. What you can do is nip it in the bud by treating early in the season, and that will keep that mite population down for a very, very long time, just from an early treatment. So early spring treatment, late winter treatment is the most important time to treat for Varroa. The next concept is that the higher the mite population gets, the more rapid its rate of increase. And the reason for that is that on an exponential growth curve, you take the current population and then multiply it by the growth rate. So the larger the current population, the higher or the larger the number of mice that are reproduced during the next growth period. So it really takes off. So I did some simulations here. So this is the number of months across here. This is your mite population. And I started in these colonies with only 10 mites here, 25, 50, 100, 150 mites. You can see with only starting with 10 mites, even after 7 months of brood rearing, Varroa is still not a problem. And it's still a slow rate increase, even if you start with 150 mites. But notice here, once this mite population starts to get up, then it starts this exponential rate of increase is very, very fast. And the absolute value of number of mites per week increasing in the hive is really, really high. So what you want to do is to keep that mite population down all throughout the season. Take home lesson here, it's much better and it's easier to keep the mite levels low all throughout the season rather than trying to bring them down later. So this beekeeper here was very proactive, did an 80% mite reduction in the springtime, and I should have redone all these graphs for you with the dates differently. So this is midwinter right here. This would be midsummer right here. Just forget the dates right now. You can type an X in on your own models and get the dates right for yourselves. But this 80% reduction here bought that beekeeper time clear through late summer, and then another low efficacy 80% treatment, and then a oxalic acid removal during winter would do a good job for him. And the main mistake that beekeepers make is they do too little too late. So this beekeeper allowed the mite population to build up until late summer, did a 95% efficacy treatment, dropped that mite population way down, but it's too late. The virus epidemic is already raging in the hive, and that colony will collapse. Whereas this beekeeper got the mice down low in the season and then hit them a second time here, and this colony will go into winter in great shape. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is what I've noticed, we do thousands of mite washes. So I have a really good idea of seeing colonies at various levels of mites. And colonies that have low mite levels are much more productive. They grow larger, they put on more honey than those in which you allow the mite levels to increase. So just from the business standpoint, the lower you can keep your mite levels in your hives, the more return you're going to get from your colonies in production. Okay, next concept. Never take your eyes off Varroa, because Varroa just is going to keep reproducing independent of you. If you're relying upon visual inspection, waiting to see mites on the back of the bees, that's not going to work, because mites are rarely on the back of the bees. Most of the time, they're on the underside of the bees' abdomens, where they can have ready access to the fat bodies that they feed on. By the time you start seeing mites on the back of the bees, it's already too late. The mite population is high. And if you can run the simulation in my model right here, you can look at right down here where it says % of mites in the brood. And you can see in the springtime, you may have 70 to 80% of the mites hiding in the brood. That's meaning only 20% of the mites are actually out on the beach. You're not going to see any of them. Most of the season, it runs about 50 to 60% of the mites are in the brood. So 40 to 60% of the mites are out on the bees. If you do see bees with dying wing or deformed wings or dying brood, you can assume that you have a high mite population. You may also, late in the season, if you look on the ground in your apiary, see bees crawling around with deformed wings. If you see this in your apiary, you can assume you've got some hives with very high Varroa levels. So for monitoring for the mites, one way to do it is with sticky boards, which track natural mite fall. If you're over 40 years of age, with your aging eyes, it's a pain in the butt. What I found is these are so erratic. The mite drop per day can vary by a factor of 3, and it's dependent upon how large the colony is and how much brood rearing is going on. So we don't use natural mite fall or sticky boards anymore in our operation, other than in scientific research where I need to test the efficacy of a chemical or something. Actually, I'm doing that today. Set up a bunch of sticky boards yesterday. The other one that people are using is the sugar roll or sugar shake, where you roll the bees in some powdered sugar, let them sit, and then shake them very hard to shake the mites off. And I have tested this with using both a gentle shake and a full 60 seconds of shaking. Now, most people are not going to shake for 60 seconds. It seems like an eternity, but I timed it for a full 60 seconds. And I found out that my mite recovery is often only around 50%, never above 80% mite recovery. So it underestimated infestation rate. Whereas with a sugar roll with a very vigorous shake, where you really beat the bees up and shake them hard, I only got 2 out of 10 where I got a 95% recovery of the mites. And I got down to as low as 50% recovery in one of them, even with a very vigorous shake. So be aware that the sugar shake can easily underestimate your mite count. On my website, I also have some recent articles on where I sampled all the frames in the hive one by one to look at the mite infestation rates. And you're going to get your highest mite infestation rate by far from a brood frame with open brood with young larvae, and somewhat lower from frames, the honey frames. What we do is we standardize all of our mite washes by taking a frame that is adjacent to the brood, but does not contain brood. That way, there's much less chance of disturbing the queen when you're taking it, and it's a more consistent mite wash. So we standardize our mite washes, always shaking the bees from a frame adjacent to the brood nest, but not actually containing brood. And we shake those bees into a tub, let the older bees fly off, scoop up a level half cup of bees, 125 milliliters, and dump them. We used to use alcohol, now we're using Dawn dishwasher detergent, which we find is cheaper and actually does a better job at getting the mites off the bees. And I have articles on my website showing the step-by-step process for this. You can make a very simple homemade mite washer. I got plans for this, just with a piece of tulle fabric and some plastic cups. So very easy to manufacture at home. You don't want to shake the bees up and down. You want to swirl this around so you don't keep stirring the mites up. You want the mites just to precipitate down, just like panning for gold. You just agitate it slightly and let the mites fall down through the bottom. If you do use alcohol, you'll get much better recovery of mites with 91% alcohol than you will with lower proof alcohol. But we like Dawn detergent the best. Now with the Dawn detergent, you're going to get bubbles on the top. So we take a magnifying makeup mirror, such as the ladies use, or maybe some of you guys use too. We lay it flat, a 6-inch diameter mirror, 10 times magnification, and we place it 4 inches, I can't remember how many centimeters that is, below the cup. Anyway, this works great. It lets you see the mites very easily from the bottom and count them. This obviously is more mites than you want to see in a hive. Here's our setup. I actually have a dedicated vehicle and a pull-out table a little holder for the cups with the mirror under there, and have a helper do these agitations while I'm taking the mite samples. As far as counts, in the springtime, we want to see counts of 0 to 1 mite. We start getting to 2 mites early in the spring, we will do a treatment. During the summer, we'll let them peak out at maybe 6 mites in an alcohol wash or a detergent wash. We get above 6, we will treat them. The next thing from hive to hive with these bees. Here's some actual data, and I've taken this data by eliminating all the mites from a hive with using 2 synthetic chemicals, and then using sticky boards. I can track. These are counts taken bi-weekly, so 3 or 4 days apart, of the number of mites that are coming in from outside that hive. So there's no mite reproduction and no mites in the hive. As soon as the mites come in, they get killed by the miticides and drop to the sticky board. You can see up here, we're getting 40 mites every 3 days coming into the hive. Our cumulative count right here is over 500 mites in late fall coming into the hive. So, and there's years where I don't have data for it, but I suspect we were up in the thousands of mites coming into the hives late in the fall. So drift is a real thing. And if I do a simulation, 2 simulations exactly the same 95% reduction, but in this one, I entered 0 for a total of mite immigration. And this one I put in 495 mites coming in for a total. This colony survives the winter. This colony does not. That extra immigration can make the difference between a colony surviving the winter or not if you've done the same treatment. Okay, number 8. What we do now is we take actually mite washes from every single hive in our operation. Now we use mechanical battery-powered agitators. This would be very hard to do if you're doing it by hand, but we actually do. We run about 1,500 hives in our operation, and we do mite washes on all. At that time of the year, we often are running 2,000 hives in early summer. So we will do mite washes on 2,000 hives, and we find that actually saves us money. And the money that we can save in unneeded mite treatments, that pays for the labor of doing all the mite washes. But the most important thing is we identify the mite disseminators, the high mite hives, and we can deal with them. So we learned this back in 2015 when we did our first large-scale mite washes with it. My first mechanical agitator. I now build much smaller ones now. I'm working on a new design actually, which I'll be publishing. And what we found was, this is the number of hives out of the 203 hives we sampled at that time. And this was the mite wash count for those hives. So this was in September, in fall, after we'd already treated the hives twice for Varroa. And over half of those hives had mite counts in the 0 to 5 range, very low. So we were happy with that. Some more had it a little bit higher, but all of these hives would be okay. They would have been just fine by the time we got the oxalic acid treatment on in early winter. It's these hives here with these incredibly high mite counts, these outliers. This one up a count of 100 mites in a mite wash right here. What we found was, when I did the math, that these hives constituted 25% of our hives, I'm sorry, 75% of our hives, whereas these here constituted only 25% of our hives. But this 25% contained 75% of all the mites in our whole operation. And these super high mite hives, that constant drift of young bees carrying mites from the high mite hives to the low mite hives, cause the average mite count in the whole operation to go up. So if you can control these super high mite hives, eliminate them from the operation, it makes managing all the rest of your hives much, much easier. So next concept, this leads to the next concept, that unmanaged hives, mites, the hives that aren't managed well for mites, they do spread their mites to their neighbors. Now imagine that you're a farmer, and you are growing apples or some other crop, and you said, oh, I'm not going to manage for pests. Well, the other farmers around you are going to get that drift from you of pests, and they're going to come on over and they're going to have a talk with you. They're going to say, you're becoming a nuisance. You're making farming hard for us because you're not managing your pests. Mites are your pests. I did a large trial, I haven't published it yet, where we glued metal tags on the backs of 6,000 bees in colonies that were about to collapse from Varroa. And then we put magnetic capture devices on entrances of hives in apiaries at various distances from the tagged hives. And we saw how far bees and mites drifted from those hives. We found out that you get a lot of drift up to 1 kilometer distant from the hives. So anybody within 1 kilometer of where you have unmanaged hives suffers from that mite drift. So when you have hives that aren't managed for mites, these are they disseminate mites and viruses, because these mites carry the viruses throughout the entire landscape before they die. We didn't see an uptick of drift at actual collapse of the hives. We just saw it during that period of time as the mites built up in these hives, but no sudden, it wasn't a bomb effect, it was a long-term effect as the bees kept drifting, carrying mites. What we do with ours, when we have a very high mite hives, we bring those hives in, we hit them really hard with formic acid. We actually will, we make our own pads and give them a very strong dose, strong enough often to kill the queen, but that we want to eliminate all the mites from those hives. It doesn't hurt the brood, and then we give them a fresh queen. We just combine them with a nucleus hive and give them a fresh start. So instead of letting those hives die, formic acid is very cheap, very easy to wipe out all the mites, and then you can, doesn't leave any residues, doesn't contaminate the combs or the honey, and then you can start over with a fresh queen. And most of the bees in the brood are still alive, but you take care of the mites. So what I suggest is here in the United States, we have people who want to be treatment-free beekeepers, and that's just an excuse for neglectful beekeeping and poor animal husbandry. If you're going to keep bees, control Varroa in your hives and benefit everybody so your neighbors don't suffer. So how do we actually manage the mite? For any agricultural pest, you have what's called integrated pest management pyramid. You start off with resistant stock. So when you have a disease that's affecting lettuce, you breed for lettuce cultivars that are resistant to that disease. Then you may do physical things. So maybe like with grapevines, you're going to prune them so they get more sunlight and more air to avoid mildew problems. Or with Varroa, you may do things such as dividing the hives. Some people use sugar dusting, other mechanical methods. Drone trapping would be one. And then, of course, you monitor for the pest. And if you do reach an action threshold that you need to deal with the pest, you would first use a biopesticide. So that would be like an organic acid or an essential oil. And as a last resort, you use synthetic chemicals. Unfortunately, in most countries, when Varroa invaded, the beekeepers just skipped all these steps and went straight to the synthetic chemicals. And what we're seeing now is throughout the world, the mites have developed resistance to these synthetic chemicals. We've already blown through fluvalinate and coumaphos here in the United States very quickly, and amitraz is now failing. In Europe, where they've had the mite even longer, none of those chemicals are working well. And the beekeepers wholesale are shifting back to the natural treatments, especially with oxalic acid. Oxalic acid and thymol are the two most promising of the biopesticides. And that's all that we've used for many years in our operation. Okay, so the start of how we would do this, resistant stock and biotechnical methods. The eventual goal is for us to keep bees that can control Varroa all by themselves. And this has happened in a number of population of bees throughout the world. South Africa being notable, how quickly if you didn't intervene, that the bees can develop resistance to the mites. So the South African beekeepers, they don't manage Varroa at all. It's in all their hives, but they do not consider it a problem in any way. The Africanized bees throughout much of South America, Central America, Mexico, and up into Southern California, they're not as nice to work as the European bees, but they also do a better job of controlling the mite. Not a great job. They still benefit from mite management. They do a better job. So for selective breeding for Varroa resistance, this is something I've been very much involved in for the last several years. And because bees can come up with all kinds of different ways of breeding for resistance. And this is a great article here, a recent one, showing different ways that they can do it. The most common method the bees, when left to their own devices, is not by grooming and not by removing brood, but by this uncapping, recapping behavior where they just disrupt the mite reproduction while they're in these cells. And I see this behavior in my resistant colonies. What I decided to do is to walk the walk and for the benefit of our Northern America bee breeders, and said, hey, what if I just tried a very simple method of just following suggestion by Harbaugh and Harris back in 1999 to simply compare the growth of mite populations in all my colonies and then only breed from the ones that had the least amount of mite growth. So I'm doing this walking the walk, and I'm being followed very carefully by the large bee breeders in the United States. I'm keeping this very simple, so no fancy type of science. You simply start nukes in the spring with reduced levels of mites. And in my operation where I live, this would be your typical mite wash count getting up into the 30s, 50s, 70s, and the colonies would all collapse here late in the season. With my resistant colonies, these are what we're getting. So we do a test in early summer, midsummer, late summer, and autumn, and then we'll do another test in the next spring. And typically they keep the mite counts down like counts of 1, 2, 0 for the entire year. They may bump up a little bit right here in the fall, but they'll take them back down to 0. So we've only bred off of colonies for several years now that are able to manage the mites all by themselves. And these colonies are run right in the yards with the rest of our hives. Any colonies that fail this test, the mite count starts to go up. We simply remove them from the breeding program. The hives stay there. We just take the tag off the top and we treat them for mites. So these resistant hives don't get any special attention. They stay in the yard with all the other hives. They just don't get treated. And we have a lot of hives where they just keep the mite counts to 0 all by themselves. And my assistant said, oh, we like this. Zeros are heroes. And these 0 mite breeders are great. The problem is, just because a colony can manage mites all by itself doesn't mean that the queen carries all the genetics. It's not a very heritable trait. So we're working on this, on heritability. The exciting thing that we found, though, is that they're beautiful colonies. You can see a little bit of the spottiness from the uncapping, recapping behavior, but they're productive. They're often the most productive in the yards, making the most honey, and very, very gentle. We don't see any association with defensiveness or anything. So these, we're very happy with these, and it's very exciting seeing these colonies that don't need any Varroa control at all and are very productive and gentle. So we started off with less than 1% of the colonies in our operation managing the mites by themselves, and we built up over the year, and I don't know what happened this year. We dropped down. We were hoping for this trend to continue up high, so we'll see what happens next year. So progress is slow. So right now we're still under 10% of our colonies that are fully resistant to mites. So we don't claim mite resistance. I'd want to get up to that 90% range, but it sure is beautiful working with these hives that don't need any mite management at all. And I can tell you right now that someday Varroa will only be a minor problem. The bees will evolve with us or without us. But when we start getting enough breeders interested that we have resistant stock, everybody's going to shift over to mite resistant stock, and you won't have to worry about treating anymore. But until then, we're going to have to deal with managing the the mites. So biotechnical methods. You can do drone brood trapping. This is our own, how we make our own drone frames. We leave 2 inches of worker brood above and leave this blank. We drop it in the upper box and let the bees, they will always put drone brood right here. And then when it's full of bees, you can cut it out. This helps a bit. This is not going to control the mites entirely. So we cut it out once a year, but we use this for controlling where the bees build drone comb in our colonies. We sell a lot of nucleus colonies, and the buyers don't like drone combs, drone brood in the worker brood frames. So this tells the bees where to put the drone comb. This also helps us to remove drones from high mite colonies so they don't mate with our low mite breeders. There's also an interest in thermotherapy, where you heat up the hives to kill the mites. The mites are more sensitive to the temperature than are the bees. I did a test of this last year on 4 different hives, heating them up for 3 hours, and drives the bees out here to see how well it killed the mites in there. Then I dissected the brood out. I've written this up, it's on my website. Surprisingly poor mite kill in the sealed brood. Then the question was, well, are the remaining live mites sterilized by that heat? And looking here, this would be our mite wash counts for half cup of bees at day 0, 24 hours, day 15, a month later up to day 42 from the 4 different hives. And what you can see, yes, the mite counts did go down for 15 days. Now, if these mites were sterilized, the counts would continue to go down, but no, we saw the counts go right back up. So no indication that those mites were sterilized by the heat. So we don't, for a commercial beekeeper, I can't see heat sterilization being useful. One thing we do is springtime splitting. We split all of our hives in the springtime when we return from our almond pollination. We set up an assembly line and we make about 200 nucleus colonies every day until we've split every hive in the operation. And then we do a simple thing. It's called, if you look up on my website, simple early treatment of nukes. It shows that if we put a queen cell in, you have this 1-day treatment window when there's no sealed brood in the hive, where a simple oxalic acid dribble will kill most of the mites in the hive. And so you hit them on about day 18 with oxalic acid, or you can put an Apivar amatraz strip in at that time. And so the most important thing is you've got to get it right on day 18 before there's new brood being sealed. This cost us 5 cents worth of oxalic acid and takes us 5 seconds to put this on per hive. So we do this to every hive. This starts us off clean every spring. The other thing you can do if you're a smaller scale beekeeper, take your hives before they swarm in the spring and separate out the sealed brood from the open brood and create 2 hives. And this is on my website. I'll give you the link to this at the end of this presentation. But you put all the sealed brood into 1 hive with a queen cell and put the original queen back with only the open brood and then open frames and honey. Let the field force return, and this colony will immediately recover its strength. But you hit them with oxalic acid immediately, and now you have a mite-free colony with the old queen. This one, you have to wait 18 days, and then you hit it with oxalic acid dribble, and now you have a mite-free colony with a new queen. So either you can keep the 2 colonies separate or combine them back together for the honey flow, and now you've avoided swarming, you've controlled the mites, and you've requeened your colony. So this method is popular in Europe, and for the small-scale beekeeper, can work quite well. When we get to treatments, understand that each treatment has limitations and best windows for use during the season. So amatraz needs to be taken off before you put your honey supers on. Formic acid and hops beta acids can be used while the honey supers are on. Thymol is not recommended early in the season because it suppresses brood rearing. So we use this in the late summer after we've pulled the honey. And then oxalic acid, at least in the North America, is registered only for the early spring and fall. I'm trying to get it registered for us to use throughout the season with the extended release oxalic acid. which we'll talk about in a few minutes. As far as synthetic miticides, Coumaphos is largely fails now. The mites are resistant. You may be able to return to Apistan, the fluvalinate, or possibly flumethrin, but most beekeepers, commercial beekeepers, are using some form of amitraz with the apivar strips in North America. I don't know what you have down in your country with amitraz. But these are quite pricey. These work really well early in the season, like on nucleus colonies, because then one strip can eliminate the mites from the colony. But we are seeing signs of resistance throughout the world to amitraz. I don't know how many more years this will be efficacious. And it takes about 8 weeks for full efficacy with amitraz. Big mite reductions the first 3 weeks, and then slow reductions. So it's not a very quick treatment. So the Canadian beekeepers, they use it in the springtime as opposed to a fall treatment. The hops beta acids, there's a new product out, the HopGuard 3. This works very well when there's no brood in the colony, but for a summertime treatment, when there's brood, you would have to repeat this once every week for 2 or 3 weeks to get the mites down. Now let's get to the essential oils. There's a number of them, and lots of beekeepers just love pouring essential oils into their beehives. And what they don't realize is there's a reason that plants make essential oils. They're called secondary metabolites. And the plants make them because they are repellent to insects or kill insects. Honeybees hate most essential oils. So the last thing I'd be doing is dumping essential oils into my hive. Which we want is the most well-proven is Thymol, and the bees hate Thymol, but it works really well in late summer for mite control. We use the Apiguard gel. We actually make a homemade Apiguard if you wish, and then there's other products on the market with Thymol. We've had very good success for many years in California. We make a 1.5 inch tall rim that sits on top of the hive below the cover. Put an airspace around here, put 50 grams of Apiguard on, and then repeat this after 10 days. Now, if you're using Apiguard, it's only efficacious if the bees physically pick this up and remove it. If you don't have enough bees up to the top of the box that they don't remove this, you will not get good mite control. So we put this on in late summer after we pull our honey. We've been very happy with the Apiguard gel. There's some new research just recently published out of Canada where they put Thymol dissolved in glycerin. It doesn't actually dissolve, but they put it in glycerin for extended release. And this looks really promising, exciting. It's something I've worked on a few years ago. So I'm resuming research just this week at home. And I'm currently running trials. Yeah, here we go. I'm testing with cotton pads here of Thymol and glycerin for extended release to see what kind of pads I want to use. So Thymol, proven efficacy over many decades, inexpensive, easy to apply, but it does suppress brood rearing temporarily. So don't use it early in the season. Then we have our organic acids, formic acid and oxalic acid. Formic has a huge advantage that it vaporizes at room temperature and will penetrate the cappings, can kill the mites with underneath the cappings. Formic acid is a natural product produced by ants. These are carpenter ants from up where I live. And if you pick these up and sniff them, your breath will stop from the formic acid, make your eyes water. But there's lots to be said for formic acid, widely used in Europe and also in Asia. And it can penetrate the cappings and kill the mites that are in the brood. The other thing we see is after you've treated with formic acid, it does something because you can have a colony that just has really lousy brood pattern. And when the queen starts laying again, the brood just comes back beautifully, always. So formic acid gives colonies a very nice, fresh start. So we have now in the United States, Formic Pro strips. One strip placed and repeated after 10 days is much easier on the bees and the queen. You also can cover the top of the strip with a piece of plastic or wood especially with smaller hives, to slow down the evaporation rate. So we've experimented with that a lot. We use this even on 5-frame nukes by covering the top of the strip to slow the evaporation rate. And this will give you very good mite control, but you may in hot weather have some queens being replaced by the bees. And they usually will replace the queens, especially when you use one strip repeated at 10 days. The other one is 2 strips at once. This will give you a faster knockdown, but it is more problematic with the queens. And then there's all kinds of other ways of applying formic acid, and we've experimented with this with the flash treatment and other ones. And again, different ways to use it. They're not all registered for use. I'm not going to go into them, but formic is really good at, if you really want to get the mites killed really quickly in a few days in a hive, formic acid will do the trick. And the downside of formic acid, yes, is the fear of losing the queen. I'm not convinced that it's the formic that kills the queen. It may be the bees in response to the formic that kill their queen. There's still more to learn on this. So one of the things you can do, especially if you're a smaller beekeeper, simply remove the queen from the colony before you treat it. Put her in a cage in the house or put her in a nucleus colony. Hit the hive with formic acid. After 3 days, the formic vapor levels are very low. You can put the queen back in the hive at that time and not have to worry about losing your queen bee. So pros and cons of formic: it can be used while the honey supers are on. It does go into the cappings and it doesn't leave any residues. It doesn't contaminate your combs. It also eliminates the tracheal mite. The downsides are it's tricky in hot weather. It makes a brief brood break for about five days. And of course the queen loss. Now, here's the exciting one we use. Here's my grandson sucking on Buttercup oxalis. All of us kids in California grow up sucking on this, which is the sap is oxalic acid and sugar right here. So we're essentially treating our hives with what's in the sap of this Buttercup oxalis. It tastes like lemonade. And we dribble it on at the rate of 5 milliliters per seam of bees in the hive. It has to be on the bees, not on the wood. And you can online, if you just Google oxalic acid treatment table, this table will come up. It'll show you how to mix any amount that you want very accurately. We use the medium strength here. In warmer areas, you may want to use the hot strength. If you have a long winter, use the lower strength right here. The other thing is this shows it for mixing it with sugar. A number of us are now mixing it with glycerin instead because the bees are not tempted to eat it themselves if you dribble it. If it's mixed with glycerin, they don't like the taste of glycerin. So you wind up with less problems with the bees with the glycerin dribble. The glycerin also helps to distribute the oxalic acid better on the bees. But I do have the same formula for the glycerin on this web page now. We apply it using a garden sprayer pumped to a low volume with a lot of airspace in here for steady, and we calibrate it so 1 second will put out 5 milliliters. So you just go chimpanzee 1, chimpanzee 2, chimpanzee 3, or whatever you want to say. So it takes 10 seconds to apply it to the box, and we'll shoot some up here above the top of the cluster and let it dribble down on the top. And 2 of us, we can easily do 400 times in a day doing this. We really like the oxalic acid dribble applied this way. We've done this for many years and with great success. Here's my 2 sons doing it during the winter, tighter cluster, cold day, and hit these hives, and they come out in the springtime just beautiful. So everybody should base their operation with an oxalic acid dribble as soon as the colonies go broodless in the fall or late winter. Now in Europe, they're doing a lot of summertime oxalic acid now, where they're creating an artificial brood break or induced brood break by caging the queen. And they have a bunch of different kinds of cages. The problem being when you cage the queen away from brood for a while, sometimes the bees then kill the queen when she's released. They don't like the queen to stop laying. One way to get around that is to use these excluder frames. And we use these in our queen rearing in order to trap the queen, a breeder queen, on one frame so we can have all even-aged larvae to graft. So these are homemade, piece of plywood, cut the red, tangle out, cut a queen excluder in half and make this size to fit half of a queen excluder and staple it in place. So we drop down to them. There's one queen excluder division board. There's the second, and here's the frame where the queen will lay right here. And here's the hive setup. And then you can put either a lid over here or you can put another queen excluder, and the queen is then trapped to this frame. The bees don't mind it with the queen being trapped to a frame, and they will not kill or supersede that queen then. For queen rearing, we rotate these frames every few days, but you can leave the queen on one frame for a long time. And then the timing is, you put her on day 0. On day 14, you can release the queen, and then on day 21, when the first brood is ready to emerge, you just take this frame out of the hive. This alone will reduce the mite population of the hive by 25 to 30%. But beyond that, at that point, when you remove it, you give them a dribble of oxalic acid, and you're going to kill virtually all the mites in the whole hive. So very simple. Day 1, confine the queen. Day 14, release the queen. And day 21, remove that trap frame, let it chill to kill the mites and the brood in there, and then dribble the colony with oxalic acid. And this timing is on my website. I'll give you the web page at the end. Oxalic acid vaporization. This is interesting, very popular on the East Coast of the United States. We're not too crazy about our operation. It's very quick. You don't have to open the hive. You can blast the oxalic acid in. Doesn't seem to contaminate the honey in any way. But these are treatments by date, 10 days apart, with 2 hives. Here's the starting mite counts right here. To bring those mite counts down, you can see how many treatments it took. So the vaporization, when there is brood in the hive, is not very efficacious. You have to actually do it like 2 to 3 days apart to really get good efficacy. The second thing is my crew did not like vaporization at all. We've done oxalic acid dribble and extended release for many years, and those are very, very safe to the applicator. The vaporization, you do not want to breathe those fumes. So my crew doesn't like the vaporization at all. So now we get to the one that we're very excited about, this extended release, not yet approved. You guys may have Aluin cap down there. If that's registered in your area, that's the first one out there. And there's some other manufacturers looking to come up with some new ones. I'm hoping that we can get, the beekeepers can be approved to just mix it up themselves. So here's cardboard strips similar to Aluin cap, but for a commercial beekeeper, this is very time consuming to put in and take out these cardboard strips. So I've tested various matrices. This is cellulose sponges we tested last year, and very, very high efficacy. The best of any of the mite treatments we tried as far as reduction, but it does take a while. We got our best efficacy after about 70 days. So 70 days, a long time. So the best bet is to apply this fairly early in the season, and it will control mites, even a very low dose. So you can read the most recent articles on my website about this. I'm currently testing some new substrates. I just took this photograph a couple of days ago, and we're in the middle of a trial right now. I'll be going out as soon as I record this video and actually putting some of these in. And I do have a authorization. This is not approved in the United States. I don't know about your country, but I have to cover my butt here. And I'm thinking that this may be, we may use Formic early in the season, use the extended release oxalic acid all during the honey flow. We could always use a thymol cleanup in the late season if we need it, and then an oxalic acid dribble going into winter. So as far as oxalic acid, inexpensive, very safe to apply other than the vaporization. Can be high efficacy, doesn't appear to harm the queens. The colonies are very tolerant of oxalic acid. Temperature independent, works just fine on hot days, but it does not work well if there's brood in the colony unless you're using the extended release. Okay, the last thing or second to the last concept is rotate your treatments. And even though it's unlikely that the Varroa is going to be able to evolve resistance to either oxalic acid or thymol, who knows, it could happen. So you want to rotate your treatments, and you can have amitraz in that rotation. In our operation, we rotate these two treatments right here, and are very happy with that. Here's our actual mite management schedule. That in midwinter, we've started with a low mite level because we did an oxalic acid dribble in the when they went broodless earlier on. We bring them back from almonds. We split the colonies, create an induced brood break with a queen cell, and hit them with an oxalic acid dribble. That buys us time until midsummer at the end of the honey flow, where while the honey's still on, we'll hit them with a little bit of formic acid, one pad, reduce the mite levels a bit. Once we get the honey off, we give them the thymol treatment and get that mite level down really low here. We feed them protein in late summer in preparation for winter because we go to almond pollination, and then an oxalic acid dribble. Notice our mite counts never ever get high at any time of the year. And we've used this treatment strategy for many years now, since 2001 with very, very high success. And you can customize it. You can customize this model to create whatever colony population and amount of brood for any elevation or any place you live. So it's fully customizable. Once you get that customized, then you can sit down at night and play with the different kinds of treatments you have available. And it shows on the model what kind of efficacies you can expect, and come up with your own management plan for your own objectives and your own cash flow for your own operation. The last concept. If you control Varroa, provide good nutrition, most of your problems will go away. Manage the mites, provide good nutrition, and beekeeping is pretty easy again. My recipe for healthy hives: keep young, vigorous queens in your colonies. We requeen all of our colonies every year. Provide good nutrition, so we do feed pollen sub at certain times of the year. Control Varroa all year long, never let it get high. Minimize your toxins, so if you use synthetic miticides or you're exposed to agricultural toxins, you may need to rotate your combs out. And mainly be proactive rather than reactive. Be ahead of the mites rather than trying to react to them once they've gotten high. And then if you go to my website, if you go to the beginners pages in the first year of beekeeping, most of the charts and other things that I've showed you with print on them are on this page, so you can pull them off of there. All right, thanks, and happy beekeeping to all of you.